"They're too close," Anya whispered, her heart beating like a tribal drum as the earth trembled beneath her feet. The bear's icy howl pierced the white silence, a premonition of death that only she, blind, could feel vibrating in the frozen snow. 7 colossal ice monsters converged on the frightened reindeer calves, the last hope of her village. With the frost burning her lungs and the cracked ice abyss ahead, Anya knew her blindness would be her only guide, but what she would discover about the true meaning of sight would change everyone's destiny. Anya felt the tremor again, stronger this time, not just the distant echo of heavy footsteps, but the direct vibration that climbed through the soles of her fur boots and coursed through every bone in her body. It was the weight of the bears, 7 colossal predators approaching, and the ice beneath her own feet groaned in response. A shiver ran down her spine. It wasn't fear for her own life, but a deep anguish for the small hearts she knew were trapped ahead. The reindeer calves, fragile and innocent, were the future, the promise that the village would survive another harsh winter. She took a deep breath, the icy air cutting like blades, and raised her gloved hands, feeling the space in front of her. There was no light to guide her eyes, but her fingers, calloused by decades of work and shaped by snow and wind, were her eyes. Every bump, every depression on the uneven ice surface was a letter in a language only she understood. The metallic scent of the ice, mixed with the wild, heavy odor of the bears, grew more intense. She could see the landscape, a 3-dimensional map sculpted in her mind by tactile and auditory memory. The bears' howls, now closer, were like distant thunder, but Anya deciphered them. They were vectors of fury, indicating exact direction and distance. She tilted her head, her snow-white hair framing a face marked by life, and listened. The wind whispered secrets, carrying the subtle vibrations of compacted snow and the expanding and contracting ice. She felt the air current shift, indicating a deep crevice to her right, an invisible abyss that could swallow her. With slow, deliberate steps, Anya began her impossible journey. Every movement was a precise calculation, a dance with danger. She extended her birchwood staff, a gift from her late husband, and used it to probe the terrain ahead. The tip of the staff slid over the smooth ice, tapped small elevations, tested the solidity of every square centimeter. Her mind projected the image of the terrain, visualizing the hidden crevices and icy ravines that separated her from the calves. With each step, the sound of cracking ice intensified, a sharp lament that seemed to come from within the earth itself. The bears were almost there. She imagined the calves, huddled in terror, their small hearts beating erratically, their warm breath freezing in the air. A wave of determination surged through Anya. Stronger than the cold, she could not fail. The village depended on her not just to save the calves, but to reaffirm faith in the wisdom passed down through generations. Her lips moved, and a soft sound, almost inaudible at first, began to emerge. It was an ancestral chant, a melody her grandmother had taught her, a call that echoed the very soul of Yakutia. The song, woven with the words of her ancestors, spoke of safety, of home, of a verdant meadow where snow never fell. She knew that the calves, even in the throes of terror, would feel the vibration of that sound, a promise of hope amidst despair. Her eyes, though sightless, seemed to glow with an inner light, reflecting a perception that transcended the physical. She wasn't just walking. She was weaving a path with her voice and her soul, an invisible thread to guide the frightened little hearts away from the edge of the abyss. Time was running out, and Anya's melody was the only bridge between life and death in the white expanse. Anya's melody, a thread of warmth in the frozen expanse, traveled through the thin air, reaching the frightened little hearts. She felt, through the vibrations of the snow and ice, a slight change in the calves' breathing. It wasn't an abrupt movement, but a pause in their panic, an instinctive recognition of a sound that promised safety. Her lips continued to intone, the ancient words flowing like an underground river, carrying the history and hope of her people. With each note, the elder felt the connection deepen, an invisible link between her soul and that of the small animals. The bears, however, were not so easily calmed. Their roars echoed, closer now, mingling with the sinister sound of groaning and cracking ice. Anya could see the confusion in the predators, a momentary hesitation caused by the chant. But hunger and instinct were forces too powerful to be dispelled by a simple melody. She realized that the chant by itself would not be enough to drive away the bears or guide the calves to safety. The glacier beneath her feet trembled violently, and she knew that time was her cruelest enemy. With new urgency, Anya advanced, her staff probing ahead. The scent of the bears was almost unbearable, a constant reminder of the imminent threat. She felt the heavy warmth of their massive bodies in the icy air, their panting breath creating small clouds of vapor. Her ears, sharper than ever, caught the drag of claws on the ice, the crack of each colossal step. She was on the threshold of confrontation, where life and death danced in a silent ballet. Anya paused for an instant, closing her sightless eyes to concentrate even more. She visualized the glacier not as a flat surface, but as a three-dimensional labyrinth, with its crevices and elevations. The ice's vibrations told her a story of fragility and resilience, of strengths and weaknesses. She felt a deep crevice to her left, a natural trap that could be used, and to her right a series of small bumps and depressions, a winding path that for the bears would be a challenge, but for the calves a chance of escape. A bold and dangerous idea began to take shape in her mind. What if, instead of just guiding the calves, she could guide the predators themselves? Divert their attention, use the treacherous glacier terrain against them, not to harm them, but to confuse them, to lead them away from the calves, to an alternative route that only she, with her unique perception, could navigate without danger. It would be an act of desperation, but also of genius, transforming her apparent weakness into a powerful weapon. Her heart quickened with the audacity of the plan. She would become a beacon of distraction, a point of attraction for the bears, while the calves escaped. It was an immense risk, but the image of the small reindeer hearts, the promise of a future for her village, ignited a flame of courage in her chest. She raised her head, her features marked by age and wisdom, and began to change the melody of her chant. Now it was not just a call for safety, but a subtle challenge, a provocation that the bears, in their ferocity, could not ignore. Anya stepped forward, not towards the calves, but in a direction that would lead her closer to the bears, into the heart of danger. Her feet felt the crack deepen, the ice groaning under her weight and that of the predators. She was about to embark on a deadly game of perception and cunning, where the lives of many depended on her ability to see the invisible and transform fear into a strategy of salvation. The white expanse awaited the elder's next move, a dance between vulnerability and power. Anya took the decisive step, not backward, but to the side, onto a route that would lead her to the deep crevice she had sensed. Her chant, once a whisper of solace, now transformed into a stronger melody, with notes that vibrated with an audacity that defied the glacier itself. It was a call, not for the calves, but for the predators, a sonic lure that spread through the icy air. She felt the almost immediate shift. The bears' roars, which had previously focused on the calves, now turned towards her, laden with fierce curiosity and palpable irritation. They didn't understand the sound, but they felt the presence, the anomaly, and the promise of a more challenging prey. Her feet, despite her age, moved with surprising agility, guided by an invisible dance with the ice. Her birch staff, her vital extension, tapped rhythmically, mapping every centimeter of the treacherous terrain. She could feel the mass of the bears shifting, the colossal weight of their bodies making the ice groan beneath them. 7 gigantic beasts, each weighing over 1,000 kilograms, were now focused on her, the blind elder who dared to challenge them. The air grew heavy with tension, the wild scent of the bears more intense, almost suffocating, mingling with the metallic odor of the ice and her own frozen breath. Anya tilted her head, her ears catching the cacophony of sounds, the drag of claws on the uneven surface, the crack of ice breaking under the predator's weight, the very beat of her heart, which seemed to reverberate throughout her body. She was at the center of a white hurricane, but her mind was clear, focused. She saw the ice labyrinth stretching before her, a tangle of crevices and elevations that the bears, with their vision limited to what was directly ahead, would find difficult to navigate. The path she chose was dangerous for herself, but calculatedly fatal for the predator's pursuit. The reindeer calves, for a brief moment, seemed to freeze, confused by the sudden shift in the predator's focus. Their small noses twitched, their wide eyes watched the elder move away from them, taking the threat with her. A thread of hope, fragile as the ice beneath their feet, began to form in their hearts. They felt Anya's chant, now more distant, but still a promise, a melody that spoke of safety and home. It was a whisper for them to move, to follow the path she had laid out for them, away from the bear's fury to the promised refuge. Anya felt the vibration of the ice beneath her feet intensify. The bears were closer, their steps heavy and determined, impatience growing in their roars. She could almost feel the warmth of their massive bodies, their icy breath on her skin, the imminent danger. But she did not falter. Her lips continued to intone the challenging melody, a sonic beacon in the midst of the storm. Her voice an anchor amidst the chaos. She knew that every step was a risk, every movement a gamble on life. The glacier was a deadly chessboard, and Anya, the most unlikely piece, was moving the kings with a wisdom that transcended sight. She turned slightly, feeling the wind shift, and took another step to the side, to the edge of a crevice she knew was too deep for the bears to cross easily. They hesitated, the ice cracking under their front paws, confusion clouding their instincts. Anya's strategy was working. She was using the very land, the very nature of Yakutia as her ally, transforming her apparent weakness into an unparalleled strength. The connection with the earth, with the ice, with the wind, was her sight, her weapon, her hope. The village's destiny rested on her ability to guide the blind, both the predators and, metaphorically, those who doubted her wisdom, towards a future of resilience and faith. Her connection with the earth, with the ice, with the wind, was her sight, her weapon, her hope. The village's destiny rested on her ability to guide the blind, both the predators and, metaphorically, those who doubted her wisdom, towards a future of resilience and faith. Anya moved with almost supernatural precision, her gloved feet finding footholds where others would see only a smooth, treacherous surface. The chant, now a sharp, persistent lament, echoed in the ice crevices, reverberating in a way that confused the bears. She felt the vibration of the predator's heavy steps approaching, the ice groaning under the colossal weight of each of the 7 bears. It was a symphony of danger and audacity, with Anya as the maestro, conducting the chaos. Her lips, cracked by the cold, continued to intone the melody, a mix of defiance and an almost hypnotic call. The bears, accustomed to dominating the landscape with their brute force, were visibly disoriented. Their roars, once full of fury and certainty, now contained notes of frustration. They followed the sound, the anomaly that was the elder, but the terrain Anya chose was a labyrinth for them. The ice rose in sharp peaks and descended into treacherous valleys, deep crevices suddenly opening, forcing them to detour, to lose their rhythm. They could not see the path as Anya could, who felt every nuance of the glacier through her feet and her staff. With each hesitation from the bears, Anya gained precious seconds. The reindeer calves, still huddled, began to lift their small heads. Anya's chant, though more distant, still reached them, and the absence of the bears' closer roars was a palpable relief. They perceived the change, the threat receding. One of them, the bravest, took a hesitant step out of the huddle. Its large, dark eyes sought the direction of the chant, and it felt the subtle vibration Anya was sending, a silent invitation to freedom. Slowly, the other calves began to follow, their small hooves slipping on the ice, but moving with new hope. Anya felt the change in the air, the calves' relief, the bears' growing confusion. She was at the edge of the crevice, the icy abyss opening before her. It was a leap of faith, a calculated risk. She knew that the bears, with their weight and size, could not cross this crevice without the risk of the ice giving way. She raised her staff, tapping it on the ice in front of her, a dry, resonant sound that served as a final invitation, a direct challenge. The bears, now furious and exhausted by the pursuit over such difficult terrain, advanced with a unison roar. The ice cracked and split under their front paws, but they stopped abruptly at the edge of the crevice, sniffing the air, confused. The elder was no longer there. Only the echo of her chant, which now seemed to come from a safer place, from the other side of the abyss, mocked them. Anya had moved, with an agility that belied her age, crossing the crevice at a point that only she, with her keen perception, had detected as safe. She felt her heart quicken, not from fear, but from triumphant exhaustion. The plan had worked. The bears were trapped by the very nature of the terrain, their hunting instincts frustrated by a wisdom they could not comprehend. Anya's chant, now softer, began to guide the calves away to safety, while the bears, confused and irritated, dispersed, searching for a passage that did not exist. The elder, with her sightless eyes, had opened a path to life, transforming the glacier into a silent testament to her inner vision. Anya felt the warmth of victory spread, mingling with the exhaustion that weighed her down. The icy air seemed less biting now, and the sound of cracking ice, though still present, no longer carried the same imminent threat. She was safe, on the other side of the crevice, and the vibration in her feet confirmed that the bears were frustrated, trapped by the natural barrier she had so cunningly used. Her lips, once tense with the challenging melody, now curved into a faint, tired smile. The village, the calves, the future, everything seemed a little brighter. On the other side of the abyss, the 7 polar bears roared with impotent fury. Their heavy steps echoed on the edge of the crevice, the ice cracking under their front paws as they tried in vain to find a passage. They sniffed the air, confused, the scent of the elder and the echo of her chant provoking them from an unreachable place. Their massive bodies, accustomed to traversing any obstacle, were now a burden, preventing them from leaping or balancing on the treacherous edge. Hunger, which had previously driven them, transformed into irritation and slowly into resignation. They could not see the depth of the crevice. They only felt the void and the danger. The reindeer calves, in turn, were responding to Anya's call. Their small hearts, which had previously beaten erratically with fear, now pulsed with new hope. They had felt the change in the air, the absence of the bear's menacing shadow. With hesitant but increasingly firm steps, they began to move in the direction Anya indicated with her chant. Their small hooves, once slippery and uncertain, found a rhythm guided by the melody that promised safety. They did not look back, only forward, towards the sound that was their beacon amidst the white expanse. Anya, from her side of the crevice, continued to intone the song, now softer, almost a lullaby. She felt the vibrations of the small hooves moving away, the sound gradually diminishing, indicating they were gaining distance from the predators. Her other senses, sharpened by necessity, painted a vivid picture of the calves' progress. She saw each cautious step, each small leap over the ice elevations, each relieved breath. It was a vision that transcended light, a perception that came from the soul and a deep connection with the wild nature of Yakutia. The bears finally began to disperse. One by one, their roars diminished, transforming into grumbles of frustration before disappearing completely. Their colossal bodies, once imposing figures of terror, now blended into the white landscape, retreating to the icy depths from which they came. Silence once again reigned on the glacier, a heavy silence, but now laden with a newfound peace. The icy wind continued to blow, but its whispers seemed to tell a story of triumph, not despair. With a deep sigh, Anya turned, ready to begin her own journey back. She had faced the impossible, overcome her vulnerability, and with her ancestral wisdom, rewritten the destiny of her village. Her journey was a testament that true sight resides in the perception of the heart, in the connection with the earth, and in faith in oneself. The glacier, once a battlefield, was now a sanctuary, and the story of her audacity would be told for generations, inspiring everyone to see beyond the obvious and to believe in the power of resilience amidst the most relentless winter. Still feeling the vibration of triumph, Anya began to feel her way back with her staff, her gloved feet seeking the familiarity of the elevations and depressions she had memorized. The wind, which had previously seemed an accomplice in her audacity, now brought a different, sharper whisper, laden with a new tension. She noticed that the ice beneath her feet did not respond in the same way. The vibrations were more erratic, less cohesive. It wasn't the sound of the bears, nor of the calves, but something deeper, more intrinsic to the glacier itself. A sense of unease began to settle in her chest, a premonition that her connection with the earth rarely failed to announce. Suddenly, a dry, loud crack, unlike any she had heard before, reverberated across the entire surface. It wasn't a superficial crack, but a sound that came from the depths, like a giant bone breaking. Anya stopped abruptly, her body tense, muscles rigid beneath her heavy garments. Her staff, which was ahead of her, sank a little deeper than expected at a point she swore was solid. A new crevice, invisible to the eyes but palpable to her keen senses, had opened right in the path she intended to follow. The ground trembled slightly, and a prolonged groan echoed from the glacier, as if the earth itself were sighing in pain. The way back, which had previously seemed a route of victory, now revealed itself as a new labyrinth. The pursuit of the 7 colossal bears, with their combined weight of over 7,000 kilograms, had left a deeper mark on the glacier than Anya had imagined. The ice, already under stress, had yielded even further, creating new ruptures and instabilities. The turning point was clear. She was no longer just returning home. She was facing terrain that had been radically altered, a challenge that would demand all her remaining wisdom and resilience. A wave of weariness, deeper than physical exhaustion, washed over Anya. It was the fatigue of the mind, the subtle doubt that crept in when the unexpected superseded the planned. Her lips, once curved in a smile, were now pressed tight. The cold seemed to penetrate deeper into her bones, not just from the environment, but from uncertainty. She felt small, a blind elder in a white, treacherous world that seemed to conspire against her. For a brief moment, the solitude of the vastness enveloped her, and the promise of the village, though still present, seemed distant, almost unreachable. But Anya was not one to surrender. She took a deep breath, drawing the icy air into her lungs, feeling the familiar burn that reconnected her to her own vital force. Her ancestors had taught that the earth, however relentless, always offered a path, a solution for those who knew how to listen. She raised her head, her ears concentrating, trying to decipher the new whispers of the wind, the new vibrations of the ice. There was no longer the chant to guide the calves, nor the provocation for the bears. Now it was a silent dialogue between her and the glacier, a search for a new truth in the altered terrain. She extended her staff again, not to feel the path ahead, but to probe the depths, to feel the thickness and stability of the ice around her. Each touch was a question, and the glacier responded with a map of fragility and resistance. The crevice blocking her path was too wide to jump, and the ice around her seemed a mosaic of cracks. Anya realized she would need a significant detour, a path that would take her far from the original route, perhaps through even more inhospitable areas, where the wind sculpted the ice into sharp and treacherous forms. Yakutia's winter, in its silent cruelty, had launched its next challenge, and Anya, with her infinite courage, was ready to face it, trusting in her deep connection with the earth to guide her through this new labyrinth of ice and danger. Anya, with her staff extended like a sensitive antenna, began to remap the world around her. Each touch on the ice was a reading, a silent translation of the glacier's new scars. The path that was once familiar was now a mosaic of uncertainties. To her left, where there had previously been a relatively safe passage, her staff found the void of a newly formed crevice, wider and deeper than the previous ones, a silent abyss that swallowed sound. A shiver ran down her spine, not from fear, but from a deep awareness of the environment's fragility. Her lips moved in a whisper, an ancient prayer to Mother Earth, asking for guidance. She turned to the right, seeking an alternative. There, the ice seemed more stable, but the wind, which had previously guided her, now seemed to play with her, bringing distorted echoes and confusing her auditory perceptions. The sharp and treacherous forms that the wind sculpted in the ice, mentioned in her premonition, were now a palpable reality. She needed to lift her feet higher, feel her way more carefully, so as not to stumble on the sharp edges that rose like the teeth of a sleeping monster. Every step was a decision, an act of faith in her senses and in her tactile memory, which held the secrets of hundreds of winters. Exhaustion began to weigh on her shoulders, not just physical, but mental. The battle against the bears, the tension of guiding the calves, and now this new challenge, all added up. She felt her toes grow numb inside her boots, and the cold seemed to seep into her garments, despite the thick reindeer fur. An image of the worried faces of her village, especially that of her granddaughter Lyudmila, arose in her mind. Lyudmila, with her bright eyes and insatiable curiosity, who always awaited her with a tight hug and warm tea. It was for them that Anya could not give in. She took a deep breath, the icy air burning in her lungs, and pushed her staff more firmly. There was a subtle elevation ahead, a small ice plateau that seemed more solid. She began to climb, feeling the strain in her already tired legs. The wind howled, trying to knock her down, but Anya dug her feet in, every muscle in her body working in harmony to keep her steady. She wasn't just climbing an elevation, she was scaling the very mountain of doubt and despair. At the top, she paused for a moment, turning her face to the wind as if reading an invisible message. Her ears caught a distant sound, a whisper that seemed to come from an unexpected direction. It wasn't the sound of something she could see, but of something she could feel, the vibration of an underground river flowing beneath the glacier, a sign that the ice structure was even more complex and unpredictable there. It was a reminder that the earth was alive, in constant motion, and that she needed to adapt to its every new breath. Anya changed her route again, veering away from the plateau that seemed promising, but now revealed a new layer of danger. She opted for a longer path, which would take her through an area of older ice, where the crevices were more predictable, though still treacherous. She felt the texture of the ice beneath her feet change, from smooth and slippery to rough and granular, a tactile map that only she could decipher. The metallic scent of the ice intensified, mingling with an earthy aroma that indicated the presence of submerged rocks, a sign of greater stability. Her gloved fingers felt the surface, seeking the small irregularities that served as footholds. She was moving slower now, each step a careful calculation. The village, with its warm lights and the scent of birch smoke, seemed a distant dream, but the promise of that return was the flame that kept her going. She was not just a blind elder. She was an extension of YAKUT itself, a guardian of its wisdom, and the glacier, no matter how hard it tried, would not bring her down. She would continue, one step at a time, until she found her way back home, to her people, to her future. Anya pressed on, every fiber of her being concentrated on the monumental task of deciphering the terrain. Her staff, her most faithful extension, felt the ice ahead, sending silent messages to her gloved hands. She sensed the density, the roughness, the presence of small air bubbles trapped in the ancient ice, each detail a crucial piece of information. The wind, which had previously howled with fury, now seemed more like a silent partner, gently pushing her, but also carrying with it the biting cold that penetrated to the marrow of her bones. Her lips were dry and cracked, but she didn't think of thirst or hunger. Her mind was entirely absorbed by the dangerous dance with the glacier. She realized that the chosen path, though older, was not immune to the new tensions. The ice beneath the surface seemed to vibrate with a contained energy, like a drum about to be struck. Suddenly, her staff sank into a seemingly solid spot, revealing a layer of soft, treacherous snow that concealed a steep decline. Anya instinctively recoiled, her heart leaping in her chest. It wasn't a crevice, but a deep depression, an invisible pit that could have swallowed her. She raised her staff, tapping it on the surrounding ice, testing the stability, and felt the vibration of a network of small cracks extending beneath the snow. A wave of frustration, almost a silent lament, rose in her throat. She had thought this path would be safer, more predictable. But the glacier, like life itself, was a constantly changing tapestry, and the recent victory had taken its toll on the fragile structure of the world around her. The image of Lyudmila, with her sweet smile and eyes full of admiration, arose again in her mind. Lyudmila did not see her as a fragile elder, but as the guardian of stories, the bridge to the village's past and future. This image was a balm for her weary soul, a reminder that her journey was not just for herself. Anya took a deep breath, the icy air filling her lungs with renewed energy. She could not afford to hesitate. Her gloved fingers felt the ice, seeking a new route, a passage that her other senses could validate. She moved slowly to the right, feeling the ice become more compact, denser. The metallic scent, which had previously mingled with the earthy one, now intensified, indicating a higher concentration of pure, more resistant ice. She trusted this sign, an invisible guide that led her away from the hidden trap. Every step was an act of faith, a silent dialogue with the earth. She felt the wind whisper in her ears, no longer as an enemy but as a messenger, bringing information about air currents and pressure changes that indicated the invisible topography. Her feet, despite their weariness, were her sharpest eyes, reading every irregularity, every subtle incline. She knew that the way back would not be a repetition of the way there. It would be a new journey, a new test of her resilience. The village, with its distant lights and the warmth of its hearths, seemed a point of light amidst the relentless darkness of winter. Anya felt the connection with her people, an invisible current of love and hope that pulled her forward. She was not just a blind elder, she was the personification of her people's strength, the voice of ancestral wisdom that whispered through generations. She would continue, one step at a time, transforming every obstacle into an opportunity to reaffirm the unwavering and unbreakable human capacity to overcome the impossible, guided by her inner vision that saw far beyond what eyes could perceive. The glacier, with its new scars, would be just another story of triumph in her long life. Anya, with determination etched into every line of her aged face, took the next step. Her staff, her faithful companion, felt the ice ahead, and what it found was not the familiar surface, but a series of small bumps and depressions, as if the glacier had been stirred by an invisible force. The sound beneath her feet was a continuous creaking, different from the sharp cracks that indicated crevices. It was a denser sound, like 1,000 tiny ice crystals rubbing against each other. Her ever-alert ears caught a distant echo, a lament that seemed to come from the depths of the earth, a subtle warning of the instability surrounding her. The wind, which had previously pushed her, now seemed to swirl, bringing with it a gust of fine snow that stung her exposed skin and settled on her garments, increasing the sensation of cold. The temperature seemed to have plunged even further, and Anya felt the tip of her nose and her cheekbones grow numb, despite the protection of her hood. A wave of weariness, deeper than physical exhaustion, washed over her. It was the fatigue of fighting an invisible and constantly mutating enemy, a labyrinth that reconfigured itself with every breath. She paused for a moment, her gloved hands gripping her staff, seeking a point of balance. The solitude of the vast white landscape seemed to intensify, and for an instant the image of the village lights, the warmth of the hearth, and Lyudmila's laughter seemed as distant as the stars. A pang of discouragement threatened to settle in, a silent voice whispering about the impossibility of her task. But Anya was not one to surrender. She closed her sightless eyes, concentrating on the vibrations of the ice, the scent of the air, the whisper of the wind. Her ancestors had taught that strength resided not just in muscles, but in the connection with the earth, in the ability to listen to its secrets. She felt the glacier beneath her feet, not as an enemy, but as a living entity, complex and unpredictable. There was a path she knew, a path that her senses could unravel. She moved to the right, where the ice seemed to vibrate with a more stable frequency, a sign of greater density. Every step was an act of faith, a silent conversation with the environment. The path grew steeper, and Anya had to use her staff for support, feeling the strain in her tired legs. The wind howled, trying to knock her down, but she dug her feet in, every muscle in her body working in harmony. She wasn't just climbing an elevation, she was scaling the very mountain of doubt and despair. At the top, she turned her face to the wind, as if reading an invisible message. Her ears caught a distant sound, a whisper that seemed to come from an unexpected direction. It wasn't the sound of something she could see, but of something she could feel, the vibration of an underground river, flowing beneath the glacier, a sign that the ice structure was even more complex and unpredictable there. It was a reminder that the earth was alive, in constant motion, and that she needed to adapt to its every new breath. Anya changed her route again, veering away from the plateau that seemed promising, but now revealed a new layer of danger. She opted for a longer path, which would take her through an area of older ice, where the crevices were more predictable, though still treacherous. She felt the texture of the ice beneath her feet change, from smooth and slippery to rough and granular, a tactile map that only she could decipher. The metallic scent of the ice intensified, mingling with an earthy aroma that indicated the presence of submerged rocks, a sign of greater stability. Her gloved fingers felt the surface, seeking the small irregularities that served as footholds. She was moving slower now, each step a careful calculation. The village, with its warm lights and the scent of birch smoke, seemed a distant dream. But the promise of that return was the flame that kept her going. She was not just a blind elder, she was an extension of Yakutia itself, a guardian of its wisdom, and the glacier, no matter how hard it tried, would not bring her down. She would continue, one step at a time, until she found her way back home to her people, to her future. Anya, with firm feet and her body leaning against the wind, continued her slow march. The old ice, rough and granular, offered a grip that the smooth and slippery ice did not possess, but each granule seemed to scratch the sole of her boots, a constant reminder of the harshness of the environment. Her staff now not only felt its way, but also steadied itself more securely on the irregularities, like a third leg that helped her maintain balance. The metallic scent of pure ice mingled with a stronger earthy aroma, confirming the presence of submerged rocks, an invisible anchor that brought a sense of security amidst the white expanse. She felt the vibration of the underground river, no longer a distant whisper, but a constant pulse beneath her feet, a rhythm that guided her like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The wind, though still biting, seemed to have somewhat lessened its fury, transforming from a howl into a softer lament, almost an icy lullaby. However, this apparent calm brought with it a new threat. The snow, which had previously been fine and sparse, began to fall in larger, denser flakes, further obscuring the already invisible path. Anya felt the flakes accumulate on her garments, on her hood, and even on her eyelashes, which did not see but felt the icy touch. Tactile visibility, her main tool, was being compromised by the growing layer of soft snow that covered the ice's irregularities, making every step a gamble. A pang of concern tightened her chest. Fresh snow could mask crevices, turn slopes into traps, and erase the tactile signs she used to orient herself. Her gloved fingers felt the ice with more urgency, trying to discern the real texture beneath the new white layer. She needed to rely even more on her hearing and smell, seeking the nuances of the wind and the subtle scents that the snow had not yet silenced. The image of Lyudmila, waiting anxiously for her, her face illuminated by the fire, became more vivid, a beacon of warmth and love that propelled her forward, despite the cold and the increasing difficulty. Anya took a deep breath, the icy air burning in her lungs, a familiar pain that reminded her of her own vitality. She could not surrender to frustration. Her ancestors had faced worse blizzards, and the wisdom they passed down to her was a shield against despair. She remembered a story told by her grandmother about how the wind, even in the densest blizzard, always left a trace, a subtle pattern in the snow that only those truly connected to the earth could feel. She concentrated, turning her face in different directions, trying to decipher the wind's message. Slowly, she perceived a pattern. The wind, as it struck the glacier's elevations and depressions, created small variations in how the snow settled. In some areas, the snow was more compact, firmer, indicating a more solid surface underneath. In others, it was softer and looser, a sign that the terrain was more irregular or that there was a void nearby. It was an invisible map, sculpted by winter itself, and Anya, with her keen senses, began to read it. She adjusted her pace, moving with even greater slowness, but with newfound confidence. Her feet, previously just feeling their way, now danced in a calculated rhythm, sensing the snow's resistance beneath her boot. Her staff, instead of merely probing, was now used to gently sweep the snow ahead, revealing the ice surface underneath whenever possible. The cold continued to bite, but Anya's mind was so absorbed in her task that the physical pain seemed to diminish. She was in a state of active meditation, a fusion with the environment. With each movement, Anya felt the connection with her people, an invisible current of love and hope that pulled her forward. She was the personification of her people's strength, the voice of ancestral wisdom that whispered through generations. She transformed every obstacle into an opportunity to reaffirm the unwavering and unbreakable human capacity to overcome the impossible, guided by her inner vision that saw far beyond what eyes could perceive. The glacier, with its new scars, would be just another story of triumph in her long life. Anya felt a subtle change in the air, a different scent that mingled with the metallic tang of the ice and the earthy smell of the rocks. It was a fresher, more humid aroma, almost like running water, but not the underground river. It was something closer, more superficial. Her ears caught a new sound, a soft dripping, almost imperceptible beneath the wind's howl. She stopped, her staff suspended in the air, her senses on high alert. The ice beneath her feet seemed to vibrate differently, more fluid, less solid. A new premonition, more urgent than the previous ones, washed over her. This was not the way home. Anya felt icy panic tighten her chest, not for herself, but for the small hearts that depended on her. The soft dripping intensified, transforming into a subtle bubbling, and the scent of fresh water mingled with the metallic tang of the ice, as if the glacier itself were bleeding. Her feet felt a growing dampness, a thin layer of water spreading beneath the snow, making the terrain even more treacherous. It was an unexpected melt, a rupture in the structure that threatened to swallow everything. She knew that the reindeer calves, still trapped on the main glacier, were in imminent danger. The ice beneath them, already weakened, would not long withstand the combination of the bear's weight and water erosion. Anya turned her face towards the direction from which the bear's sound came, which now seemed closer, more urgent. The deep growl of one of them echoed, followed by the unmistakable crack of ice breaking. A shiver ran down her spine. It was now or never. The idea of guiding the calves off the glacier had already proven practically impossible. What if salvation lay not in moving the vulnerable, but in diverting the powerful? A spark of genius ignited in her mind, an audacious, almost insane plan, but one that resonated with the ancestral wisdom she carried. She needed to lure the bears, not to their death, but into an ice labyrinth that only she, with her inner vision, could navigate. A path that would lead them away from the calves and into an area where hunting would be more difficult, where the terrain would be her ally. But how to attract the attention of 7 colossal, hungry creatures poised for the final slaughter of the calves without becoming prey herself? Anya took a deep breath, the icy air burning in her lungs. She remembered her grandmother's tales about how ancient shamans used their voice to calm beasts, to communicate with the very soul of the earth. With an effort that seemed to tear the strength from her very core, Anya raised her head and began to chant. It wasn't the soft song she used for the calves, but a deep, guttural lament that seemed to emerge from the depths of the earth. It was an ancient, almost primal sound, speaking of defiance and unwavering courage. Her voice, though aged, carried the strength of generations, an echo of the mountains and winds of Yakutia. She felt the vibration of the sound in her own body, and knew that the bears, with their keen senses, would feel it too. The bears' growls ceased for an instant, replaced by a heavy silence of surprise and curiosity. Anya knew she had their attention. She continued to chant, but now began to move, not towards the calves, but to the right, towards an area she felt was more stable, but which also contained a series of crevices and elevations that formed a true natural labyrinth. Every step was an act of faith, a silent invitation for the bears to follow her. She was the beacon, the distraction, the lure. Her feet read the terrain with frightening precision, swerving around newly formed crevices, climbing small ice elevations with the agility of a young animal. Anya's chant became more melodic, but still laden with powerful energy, a promise of something the bears seemed unable to resist. She felt the vibration of heavy footsteps behind her, not just one, but several. The bears were coming. They had taken the bait. Anya guided them along a path that narrowed, where the ice rose in treacherous walls, creating winding corridors. She could smell the strong scent of the bears approaching, the warm breath from their nostrils, the sound of their claws scraping on the ice. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but the image of Lyudmila, of the calves, of the village kept her steady. She was the guardian, and she would not fail. With one last powerful note, Anya turned sharply, casting her voice to the left, towards a deeper crevice, an abyss she knew the bears, in their fury and confusion, might not perceive. She was guiding them into danger, using the glacier itself as a weapon. The sound of a bear slipping, a growl of frustration, indicated that her maneuver was working. They were trapped in the labyrinth that only she could see, diverted from their original objective, far from the calves. The climax was unfolding, and Anya, with her inner vision, was in control. The climax was unfolding, and Anya, with her inner vision, was in control. The growl of frustration from the slipping bear echoed, followed by other sounds of confusion, of heavy paws thudding on the ice, but without the coordination of before. Anya felt that the predators were disoriented, caught in the invisible web she had woven. She continued to project her voice, no longer a chant of attraction, but a melodic whisper that seemed to guide them away, into the depths of the ice labyrinth that stretched northward, an area she knew to be rich in crevices and elevations, but far from the calves and the village. Slowly, the sounds of the bears began to diminish, transforming into distant echoes, losing their urgency and threat. Anya stopped, her body trembling with exhaustion and relief. The icy air burned in her lungs, and the accumulated weariness from hours of tension and physical exertion hit her hard. She felt her legs falter, but she did not allow herself to fall. The mission was not yet complete. Her senses, previously focused on the bears, now turned to the calves. She felt the subtle vibration of the ice beneath her feet, which seemed to have calmed. The bubbling of the melted water had diminished, and the cracking sounds had ceased. The imminent danger from the bears and unstable ice had been contained. With a deep sigh, Anya turned, reorienting herself towards the location where the calves were trapped. Each step now was slower, more deliberate, but laden with new hope. She moved with the precision of an experienced hunter, her feet reading the terrain with an intimacy that surpassed any sight. Her staff felt the ice, finding the safest path, circumventing the crevices she had used to divert the bears. The metallic scent of the ice, the earthy aroma of the rocks, and the whisper of the wind were her faithful guides. When she finally reached the area where the calves were, Anya's heart filled with an overwhelming emotion. She felt them, small, warm, trembling bodies huddled against each other. The fear in their hearts had diminished, replaced by a palpable relief. She knelt, extending a gloved hand and feeling the soft fur of one of them. The calf, previously terrified, leaned its head into her hand, a gesture of trust that brought tears to Anya's sightless eyes. Not long after, a familiar sound of voices and hurried footsteps broke the glacier's silence. Lyudmila and other villagers, who had set out in search of Anya and the calves, finally found them. Lyudmila ran to Anya, embracing her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Anya, you saved them! You saved all of us!" The other villagers approached, their faces illuminated by a mixture of relief and admiration. They saw the reindeer calves, safe and sound, and understood the magnitude of Anya's feat. She had not only diverted the bears, but had done so without a single violent confrontation, using her wisdom and her connection with the earth. Anya, with a tired but serene smile, nodded. They are safe. The future of the village is safe. The villagers, previously concerned about her blindness, now saw her with new eyes. Her apparent vulnerability had transformed into unparalleled power. She was not just the wise elder, she was the heroine who saw the invisible, the guardian who, with her inner vision, had transformed the impossible into reality. They helped her to her feet, and together, with the reindeer calves following closely, they began the journey back home, to the warmth of the village, to a future that Anya had secured with her courage and unwavering love for her people. The glacier, with its scars and secrets, would forever be the silent witness to Anya's triumph. The journey back to the village was unlike any other. It was not just a physical return, but a procession of renewed souls. The villagers, previously consumed by despair and frantic searching, now walked with a silent purpose, their eyes fixed on Anya and the small reindeer calves that followed them, fragile but determined. Lyudmila, her hand firmly intertwined with Anya's, felt the warmth of the aged skin and the unwavering strength that emanated from her. The wind, which had previously howled with fury, seemed to have calmed, transforming into a gentle whisper that carried the promise of a new dawn. The village lights, which had previously seemed a distant dream, now shone with a welcoming intensity on the dark horizon. The scent of birch smoke, of warm stew and life, floated on the icy air, inviting them home. As they approached, other figures emerged from the houses, their faces marked by concern that transformed into relief and admiration when they saw Anya and the calves. A murmur of voices, a mix of exclamation and gratitude, spread quickly. Children, wrapped in furs, peeked through doorways, their eyes wide with curiosity and reverence. Anya felt the warmth of the bonfire on her face even before reaching the village center. The sound of hurried footsteps, tight embraces, and tears of joy filled the air. The reindeer calves were immediately welcomed, wrapped in warm blankets and fed warm milk, their small hearts beating with the promise of a future. Lyudmila, with tear-filled eyes, helped Anya sit near the fire, removing her gloves and massaging her frozen hands. "You are our light, Anya," Lyudmila whispered, her voice choked. "You showed us the way when there was none." Anya smiled, a tired but deeply serene smile. She felt the village's energy, the joy and hope that pulsed in every heart. She didn't need eyes to see the transformation in their faces, the new understanding that shone in their souls. They saw her not just as the blind elder, but as the guardian of life, the voice of wisdom that had defied the impossible. That night, while the reindeer calves slept safely and the warmth of the bonfire kept the relentless cold at bay, the villagers gathered to hear Anya's story. She told it not with pride, but with the humility of one who had merely fulfilled her duty, describing how the wind, the ice, and the scent of the earth had been her guides. They understood that true sight resided not just in the eyes, but in the ability to feel, to hear, to connect with the world in a deeper way. The days that followed brought new vitality to the village. The reindeer calves would grow, ensuring survival and prosperity for generations to come. But Anya's legacy went beyond flesh and sustenance. She had planted a seed of courage and resilience in every heart. The story of her journey would become a legend, told and retold around bonfires, teaching that vulnerability can be the greatest of strengths, and that connection with the earth and with one another is the true foundation of life. Anya, sitting in her warm home, with the scent of herbal tea and the soft sound of village voices, felt a deep peace. Her wrinkled fingers traced the contours of a small reindeer sculpture that one of the villagers had made for her. She knew that her life, once seen by some as limited by blindness, had revealed itself as a beacon of possibilities. She had transformed darkness into light, fear into hope, and vulnerability into power. YAKUT, with its harsh winters and wild beauty, had once again witnessed the unbreakable capacity of the human spirit to overcome, to love, and to dream, guided by a vision that saw far beyond what eyes could perceive. YAKUT, with its harsh winters and wild beauty, had once again witnessed the unbreakable capacity of the human spirit to overcome, to love, and to dream, guided by a vision that saw far beyond what eyes could perceive. Months turned into seasons. The relentless winter gave way to a brief spring and a summer of incessant light, before the icy cycle returned. Anya's village flourished. The reindeer calves, once fragile, had grown, their strong hooves marking the snow with confidence, their coats dense and healthy. They were living proof of Anya's courage, a herd that ensured the sustenance and continuity of YAKUT life. The story of the blind elder who guided polar bears through an ice labyrinth to save the calves became more than legend. It was a pillar of the village's identity, a tale whispered around bonfires, passed down from parents to children. Anya, though the years deepened the wrinkles on her face and made her more fragile, radiated a serenity that touched everyone. Her home, once a refuge, became a sanctuary of wisdom. Villagers sought her for advice and stories, seeking the calm she emanated. Lyudmila, now a grown and respected woman, was her shadow and her voice, interpreting her subtle gestures. She had learned from Anya the art of listening with the heart, of seeing with the soul, carrying the responsibility of preserving her mentor's legacy. Anya's blindness, once seen as a limitation, was now celebrated as her greatest gift, the key to a perception that transcended the mundane. She had taught that true strength resided not in physical sight, but in the ability to feel the earth's vibrations, to decipher the wind's messages, to understand the interconnectedness of all living things. Her wrinkled fingers, which had once urgently felt the ice, now caressed the polished wood of her staff with reverent calm, each touch a memory, each fiber a story. The polar bears never again approached the village with the same ferocity. That ice labyrinth which Anya had used as a weapon seemed to have etched a lesson into their ancestral memory, a cautious respect for the woman who had outsmarted them without a fight. Nature, in its relentless wisdom, had found a new balance, mediated by the courage of an elder. Anya spent her days sitting near the bonfire, the warmth of the fire and the scent of birch filling the air. She listened to the village's hum, the children's laughter, the cawing of ravens, each sound a note in the symphony of life she had protected. Her inner vision, sharper, allowed her to see the village's future, bright and promising, rooted in resilience and love. She had proven that true sight is not limited to the eyes, but resides in the soul, in the ability to transcend adversities and transform vulnerability into an unbreakable power. Yakutia would continue to forge indomitable spirits, but Anya's story would always be the purest melody of hope and altruism, a hymn to human connection and the silent strength that resides within each of us.